Hello everyone, we're delighted to be here today for the Funding Applications in the Community Arts Sector webinar. We're just waiting for a few more people to come in and one of our panelists. So we, as you can see, there's myself, Maeve McGrath. I'm the project manager here at Creative Communities MidWest, and I'm delighted to have Monica Spencer here with us as well today from the local Creative Youth Partnership. Monica is going to be chatting with myself later on as we go through the basics really of funding applications, particularly for the arts world and in community settings. That's really, really important because there are opportunities there and not everybody knows that those opportunities are there. So it's going to be very basic for us. It'll be step by step, how to set up an ARN, how to set up an online account with the Arts Council, and we will go through it nice and slowly and make sure that it's as easy as it can be, I hope. So I just want to, while we just wait for one of our panelists to come in, just give you an overview of what we're going to be looking at today. So we're going to look at advising on current funding opportunities, companies and state bodies that you can look to, organisations for funding. We're going to focus on how to register with the Arts Council and with funding bodies, because not everybody knows how to register with the Arts Council, and so we're going to have a look at that. We're going to also encourage connections between arts communities and artists. So one of the things we find is, you know, everybody's looking to go for funding, but actually what you'll find is some artists may have already got funding and are looking for an organisation to work with. So we'll have a little wee bit chat about that. We're going to provide an overview of application requirements. What's required when you're going to fill in an application, whether that be for a state body or, you know, whether that is, you know, for just an organisation that's giving funds. And then we're going to review the supporting documentation required. What do you need to send in? What supporting documentation do you need? And, you know, where would you find that?
Okay, well, hi everyone, good morning. I suppose the information I have really was going to be supporting what Karl Wallace might have talked about, because as head of festivals with the Arts Council, I think festivals is a really excellent way to gain access, to get a foothold really on Arts Council funding. We're going to talk about a lot of other funding opportunities here this morning, but given that we're in a climate where the Arts Council grant from government has absolutely escalated, due to COVID and due to stimulus packages, it's a really good time to look at all of their opportunities and just find one that you think you might have an idea for primarily and that might suit your profile, either as an artist, individual, or as an organisation, whatever your structure might be. So I did sit on the Arts Council for a number of years, and since that time, along with other past council members, I'd be invited every now and then to chair a panel. And as you probably already know, some of you may not know, that almost all of the awards, certainly the ones that people like yourselves would be applying for, would be assessed by a panel, what's called a peer panel, and they would be independent advisors. It could be people like myself, it could be one of you, it could be somebody who's heading up an arts organisation in the north of Ireland, but somebody who would have knowledge of the sector. So I suppose what I really want to put across is what my experience is of being on those panels. And I have never been a panelist judging. I'd only be there as a chairperson, making sure that due process was carried out properly. And I have to say, it's a very, very fair system. But I do think when, you know, if it's your first time applying for an Arts Council grant, or maybe you've been unsuccessful in the past in applying, I think most of us are unsuccessful first, and it takes a little bit of an extra heave-ho to apply a second or even third time. But if you do keep trying, and if you do keep improving the quality of your idea, of your collaborators, and if you just keep it as simple, as clear as possible, you probably will get funding. So the first piece of advice, because people often ask me for advice and will I look over their application form for them, which I would never do. But the most important thing anybody can do is to read the guideline document that is attached to each award. So when a panelist, which would be between 3 and 5 people from around the country, when a panel comes together to assess, for example, an award for a theatre bursary, And I don't ever sit on that panel because I'd be too close to the theatre. But for any art form, the first thing that the panelists do is that they take out the guidelines and read them themselves, so that when they are assessing the applications that are before them, they have obviously read them well in advance, but on the morning that the decision is being made and the work is being done, the guidelines are brought out, the criteria are read aloud, there's plenty of discussion so that people know exactly what they are applying for. Some project awards would have two strands. One might have a smaller amount of money and one might have a larger amount of money. And each of those strands would have a different set of guidelines. Sometimes the award is designed for an individual artist to improve their own particular way of working, or it might be to help them collaborate with other artists towards developing an idea. And then usually on a bigger fund, the award would be given for an ambitious project where somebody might want to, what the language that's used is, where a project might contribute to the broader landscape, arts landscape nationally. So basically each fund has its own set of criteria. So that's the first piece of advice, is absolutely read the guidelines backwards. I would also say give yourself loads of time. This all sounds like very pedantic stuff, but the number of people that I know, and I'm sure I've done this myself in the past, you know what, I think I'd throw in an application there for that award. You might decide to do it 2 weeks beforehand. You're not going to get funding if you decide 2 weeks beforehand to put in an award and then try to get letters of support, unless it's some kind of a miracle. Even in the current climate with increased funding, you need time, you need to make your application. You need to go over it several times. You need to make sure that you're conveying your idea properly. So I would suggest that an idea takes months to ferment. And if you have a really good idea, you know who you want to work with, then a good number of weeks of making the application coherent, comprehensible, in simple language on an application form. It's not rocket science, but it does take time. So the artist in the community is administered by Create Ireland. And Create Ireland is, by its own definition, an organisation that promotes the collaborative arts. So that's a piece of language that they love to see in applications. They don't like community arts, even though I always use the word community arts, and I think all of us understand that. But in terms of what you write down on paper, the Arts Council and Create and the national bodies love the following kind of definitions. A collaborative arts practice is what you might talk about. So if you're making an application as an artist, you might want to develop your collaborative arts practice with, and you cite the organisation that you want to work with. If you are an organisation that wants to work with an artist, then you want to engage an artist in a collaborative arts practice or a collaborative arts scheme. In fairness, the work is collaborative in nature. The Artist in the Community programme is a very good one. The money is small, but it is a good way to get on the funding ladder. So Create puts out a call. I think there's a deadline in March and in June. And by the way, I'll put all of these emails into the chat there in a minute, Maeve, okay? But I'm sure some of you must know about Create, but you might wonder, how do you actually begin to make an application under their scheme? And for some reason, I don't believe a lot of people do make an application. And I would really strongly recommend, if you're thinking of going into a community arts programme or collaborative arts practice, that you look at the Artist in the Community scheme. So the first and easiest, I suppose, award is one which is worth 2,500, and it's called the Research and Development Award. And this Artist in the Community scheme is for artists and individual artists to apply to research and develop a new project in a community context. So let's say, for example, Maeve, who is a filmmaker as well as a theatre practitioner, let's say, Maeve, you wanted to work with South Hill Hub or Gary Owen, CDP, or whoever. You might go along and approach the person in charge and say, I have an idea for making a film about somebody who lived in this community and who did X, Y, and Z, and I want to use whatever kind of a methodology to do that. I'm not sure how it's going to work out. That would be the kind of project that you might actually apply to Create for, to fund the artist's fee, to fund whatever other little bits of incidental cost that you might need to get a project like that off the ground. It's always good if you're applying for 2,500 to one agency, it's good to have a little bit of money locally to match that award. And the local arts office is very good to give you a letter of support in that area. So if if your local community development organisation, so if it's my Ross Residents Forum, they say we'll give you a hall to rehearse in free. You can put that in as benefit in kind. They might even have €200 for catering or whatever. You can put all of that into your application and show that your overall cost might be 3,500 and you're applying to create for 2,500. But you do need a good idea for that. So that's under create. Now you can also apply for that award and you can invite a mentor to work with you. So if you're feeling like, if an artist who may not be terribly experienced wants to get a bit of advice from a more experienced artist, they can apply for 3,500, 1,000 of which is specifically to engage a mentor on that program. Create, they love mentors. I think you have a better chance of getting this award with a mentor than without, okay? Once you have done that research and development phase of your program, you can go back then and you can apply for up to, I think it's 15,000. Sorry, I'm just looking it up here. Yes, you can apply for up to 15,000 then for what we call project realization. So that creates a structured very much in a way to help a new organization or an artist, at any stage in their career to get a community-based project going. Create also has a recent Graduate Research and Development Award. So if you're a graduate of any age, you can apply there and you can get up to 3,750. It's really, really worth looking up to create website. And it is absolutely vital that you call somebody in that organization. I don't know who the correct person is now, but it is vital that you talk to them and say, does this fit the criteria? And can I make the application? And then you would have letters of support and a couple of collaborators. And it's your ingredients are in place if you want to make an application to create. Now, create only works with, I'm pretty sure about this, but you can double check this if you get onto create. They are essentially in place to work with adult community-based organisations. And create, of course, is funded also by the Arts Council, so it's a kind of a phased way of entering Arts Council funding as well. But if you're interested in running a community project with youth workers or in a youth work setting, and there's many, many, many settings that can actually be defined as youth work, and that's where I'm coming from this morning. I work as coordinator for the local Creative Youth Partnership for the ETB. So the National Youth Council of Ireland operates a program which is very like the Create one, but it's obviously for youth work settings. So it's called, and I said I will put all of these websites up in a minute. So if you have an idea, so if you're an artist and you really want to engage with a group of young people, and this can actually be quite a tricky enough thing to put together, because you do need to identify a youth group. There are many, many fantastic youth organizations, youth clubs, voluntary, professionally resourced, who are very eager and very, very efficient, and I can say that from experience, in running and collaborating on youth arts programs. So there's something called the Youth Arts Explorer Grant. You can apply for 1,500, and that's akin to the Create one for 2,500. This is very small in fairness for youth, for a national agency, but 1,500 just to test the idea in the water. So if you, recently, I'm sure she doesn't mind me talking about this, Jane Fraser, the music artist, did this with a group of young girls in St. Mary's, the Nicholas Street branch there of Limerick Youth Service in St. Mary's. In fact, it's just up on the ETV website. They made some really gorgeous tracks. So she might just leave that project, or she may go back and apply and say, look, this was very successful. We made a number of tracks. I want to go back and do a bigger project. And she might apply for a larger amount of money. It is the artist who applies for the initial grant. So as an individual artist, you can apply to the National Youth Council of Ireland for 1,500. And if you want to take that to the next stage, then the Youth Arts Organisation applies for the larger grant of 5,000. Now, the local creative youth partnership where I work, we're not a funding body, but we do work in a way, you know, we have had one grant scheme last year, but that was because we got stimulus funding due to COVID, and we really thought it was the most efficient way of distributing that money. I'm so sorry. Beg your pardon. So we did actually issue a grant award last year, but it's not something we do as a rule. But what we do is, if I mentioned earlier about asking Limerick Arts Office to maybe give a letter of support if, for example, you were applying to Create Ireland for one of their awards. What we do in the local creative youth partnership is we give letters of support to anybody who is working with a group of young people and who wants to apply to this Explorer grant. So we can offer a little bit of match funding for the 1,500 or for the 5,000 full grant. But both with the National Youth Council of Ireland and with Create, I don't think anybody would ever get the larger grant without first of all having tried it out at the smaller grant level. So if you want to work with a youth group, I would suggest go for the 1,500. You know, get on to me in the local creative youth partnership about a letter of support, and then if that's successful, go on to the fuller award. And likewise with Create Ireland, you would apply first for the research and development, and then you would go on to the full award afterwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to welcome you to Karl Wallace, the head of the Festivals of the Arts Council of Ireland. And Karl, you know, we're Trina Kayla to have you here today because, you know, a lot of the information that you would have would apply to people who are here today and who might be newbies, as we call them, new people who have maybe never applied for funding before. And I'll jump straight in because I know there are some smaller funding bands under the Your Festival Investment Scheme, specifically Band A, which tell us a little bit about. So you know, if you want to maybe tell us a bit about that. I know that that's for kind of, say, the new entrants who might be here on the call today.
Yeah, okay. You can hear me all right, can you?
Perfectly.
Great. Okay, well, hello everybody. I'm sorry I can't see you, but thanks very much for inviting me to the webinar today. So as Maeve says, I'm head of festivals, and the Arts Council, I'm sure it's been covered with you, offers a number of different awards. I think there are just shy of 100 that we offer throughout the year. And I look after something called the Festival Investment Scheme. And this is for small scale festivals. And there are 3 different kinds of application that you can make into that scheme. So the one that I think Maeve was talking about there is something called Band A. And that's for very small or new festivals. So if you have an idea, like a new idea, which might be, you know, a one-day festival or a weekend festival, that's probably the most appropriate sort of band to apply under. What I would sort of encourage you to do is, because the Arts Council has a number of different processes that you have to go through to make the application, it's always really good to get in touch with us. Give yourself plenty of time, but get in touch with us maybe, you know, 4 weeks before an application deadline, maybe a bit longer, and book an appointment to meet with us and to talk through your idea. Now, we can't tell you what to write in an application, but we can certainly advise you on what is the best scheme to apply for. And one of the things I would just say is, don't make your project fit around a funding application form. What you want to do is have a really good quality idea and then meet with the Arts Council to try and find out what is the best scheme. So which of the schemes is going to align best to your idea, because that will give you a good start. So that's probably the simple thing to say at the beginning.
That's great. And Karl, you know, when you're looking for, you know, you're looking at your application, what stands out to you really, I suppose, as a good application? Is it a strong new idea? Is it, you know, local collaborations, community involvement? Something maybe that we don't, you know, I know there's beautiful festivals like the Fiddle Festival down in Kerry. You know, what stands out to you as a really kind of good idea or application? I know you may have to kind of rethink about that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think I won't go into the detail of it, but basically when you do make an application to the Arts Council, if you make an application under this scheme, which is called Festival Investment, there are a number of different what are called criteria, and we score your application against those criteria, and that's all listed in the application guidance. So there are 5 areas. But what I would say to you is, what we always look for is we want to find out what you want to do. So what's your festival idea? Why do you want to do it? So what's the impetus behind this idea? The second thing is how you will pay for it. So yes, you'll be asking the Arts Council for some financial support, but what other financial support do you have to make the project viable? And then I think the most important one is what will be different after you've done the project? So what will you leave behind? You know, what will the outcomes be? So it's really being very clear about what you want to do, why you want to do it, and how you're going to do it. And in festivals in particular, we look for ideas which are relevant to either the art form. So, you know, you could be setting up a one-day traditional arts festival, or we look for things that are relevant to their place. So festivals for us are about making better places to live, place making. So it could be that you're setting up a festival where the community has quite a lot of ideas that they want to develop with artists, and therefore you would tell us about how relevant those community you know, relationships have evolved with artists. And one of the things we would say to you is always make sure, you know, if you're, I mean, I know it's pretty obvious, but if you're applying into the Arts Council, then obviously we're the lead agency for the arts, so we look at projects that lead out in arts development, whether that's working with an artist within a community context, or whether it's working with within an art form and you're trying to develop that art form or develop local artists in that art form. So we look for where festivals are relevant to their communities, and we use the word community really broadly as well. So it can be a geographical community in a place, or it can be a community of interest. So it could be a particular group or a particular set of artists working in a particular way. So if that gives you a little bit more detail.
Great. And I think a lot of people would kind of be concerned. They might say, well, we've never had a festival before, or, you know, we've never had a kind of a one-day event. What do we send you to let you know that we're serious and that we're, you know, would it be helpful, I guess? What kind of paperwork should they send you? Maybe an event that they did previously, or tell you about their committee or their board? Would any type of that type of paperwork help in their application if they haven't made an application previously for something like this?
Yeah, again, that's a really helpful question. So when you apply into this particular scheme, you'll find a section in the guidance called mandatory supporting material, and you have to supply that with your application, because otherwise it won't be considered. And for small festivals that might be applying, you know, as you say, Maeve, for you know, Band A, that sort of to do a smaller model of a smaller festival, you have to provide us with kind of 2 things as a minimum. So the first thing is we ask for a brochure, which might be, you know, it could be a brochure from a previous festival that you've done, and we ask you for letters of support, and that can be, you know, that can be from, you know, it could be from a local school that has a number of, you know, classes that want to engage in your festival program. It could be from a local business sponsor. It could be from the local authority. So you would send in a number of letters which support your project. So it's not about your organization, it's about your proposed project. So basically, we always look for evidence. So if you say you're going to run a one-day festival, we will look to see what partners you have. Are the partners committed to that project, and what are they going to bring? Are they going to bring people? Are they providing money, supporting you in kind? If you're setting up a new festival, we don't obviously ask you for a brochure because you haven't done your festival yet. So we ask you for CVs of the people managing the festival. So we can just have a look at kind of what experience you might have, so that if you're setting something up new for the first time, we might look and see if you've got production management experience, or if you've got experience of working in the arts in another way. If you haven't, and this is all new to you, and you want to set up a festival, and you don't have that kind of experience of running one before, it's always good to provide us with information where we can be reassured that the model that you're asking us to invest money and support in is credible and feasible. So one of the things that I would say is, if you are doing something for the first time, you might want to have a number of mentors attached to your project, or you might want to have someone who works in the professional arts that's guiding you. So you might say, project for the first time, but I've got somebody here that we are going to consult with over the period of the festival to support our management of it. So I think what I would say is, always where you think there might be a question mark around what you're proposing, the assessors are always looking for evidence. I'm always looking for how the project is managed, how it's costed. Are you doing what you say you want to do in the program that you propose? So provide us with as much evidence as you can. If you have a constitution, if you have a strategic plan, if you have things that your organization is clear about in the way that it works, it's always helpful to provide that, and that gives us a sort of understanding of what you're doing as an organization and what you want to achieve.
That's brilliant, Karl, and that's really, really great advice. Like I say, a lot of the organisations with us today and community groups and artists may not have applied for any kind of funding like this before, so that's really concise. And just to finish up, you have 2 call-outs, don't you? Twice yearly call-outs for various ends of the year for. So I think probably for 2022, you're probably closed off now, aren't you, at this stage?
Yeah, so we've just completed our 2022 second call, so that's all our funding will be allocated for next year at the end of this year. We work a year ahead, and the reason why we do that is to allow festivals planning time. For some, it is a challenge, but we encourage festivals to plan ahead, because there could be international groups that you want to work with, and their planning cycle is much further ahead sometimes than Ireland. So next year we'll have 2 rounds. I think the first one is in June, so that it means it closes in June. So we generally have applications open for a month before. So you should go onto the Arts Council's website, have a look around May time, and you'll find what's called Festival Investment Scheme Round 1. These 2 rounds, you can only apply into each round depending on the date of your festival. So if you're running a festival from January to June of 2023, then you have to go into round 1. So the closing date for that will be June. And if you're running a festival July to December of 2023, you'd go into round 2, which is probably going to be around October time. So just make sure that you put your application into the right round. If you do a festival that runs in June and finishes in July, you have to go into round 1. So it's about when your festival date starts and commences. But what I would say to you just before I go, Maeve, is go onto the Arts Council's website if you're in doubt, have a look at, go onto the contact list and you'll find the festival team. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to pick up the phone or send us an email. We're very happy to meet with you, and we're very happy to talk things through. If you're applying to Arts Council funding for the first time, it can be a little confusing because there's a particular kind of process that we go through. So we would always encourage you to have conversations with us prior to applying, and after application and you get the results of your application, we would encourage you to keep talking to us irrespective of the response, whether you're supported or not supported, because us having a clearer understanding of the project and how you want to run it, you know, informs our professional knowledge and ultimately, you know, makes us understand what you're doing in the context of, you know, the area that you might be developing the work. So it's always good to keep that dialogue with us, irrespective of whether you're funded or not. So I would always encourage you to get in touch with us.
Brilliant, Karl. And listen, Gurmila Magut for persevering here to bring you in by phone is fantastic. And what a workaround. We'll know that in future. I'll tell you. Thanks so much, Karl. We really appreciate that. And we'll talk to you later. Best of luck with the rest of the day. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
That's great. Thanks a million, Karl Wallace, for that and for persevering to come in, and loads of information there as well. Some of that we'll be touching on, and he's ticks a lot of boxes of things that we would have wanted to talk to you about as well. Absolutely super. And I would never have thought to call in. So that's great. Thank you, Karl Wallace. Okay. So we are still here looking at our Arts Council website, which Karl explained. You know, all the details are here, and he's absolutely right. If there is a team that you want to, you know, talk to, all the information is there on the website, and they are hugely accessible and they're really, really great. And do get in touch with them, you know, make a phone call or send off an email and follow up with a phone call. As Karl said, the Festival Investment Scheme there, twice yearly calls for that. I know that Monica talked a little bit about the artist and youth work residency schemes. Now, one thing that we would say is do sign up for the newsletters for all of these organizations that we're going to talk to you about. You know, I hear people often say to me, oh, I never knew it was there. I never heard about it. Or, you know, I didn't know it was on. Even if you want a separate email that just has all your newsletters and all your blurbs and all your mail outs coming into, do have that, because the Arts Council newsletter is great. When it comes out, it gives you information on when a scheme is about to start. Similarly with the Limerick Arts and Culture Office, you know, sign up for their newsletter and we'll come to that. Follow them on social media, really, really important. The Arts Council Facebook, Twitter and Instagram accounts are very, very active. So I would most certainly be looking at that. What I want to look at is how to register, because not everybody knows how to do this. And so here I have the online services page. So this is when you're looking at the website, just go along the top and go into online services. And I mean, I'm talking really basic here now, because sometimes it's really difficult to know when you look at a bigger, which bit do I go into? Go into online services and you're going to click login at this point. And then this will take you to this page here. And on this, it says ARN and password. So I have an ARN and I have a password already. I'll pop that in. But if you want to go down here to where I have my little smiley face down here, it says sign up. And you can sign up to register your, you as an artist, you as an organization, you as a community group. It'll ask you, are you an individual or are you an organization? And then it will ask you to fill this information out. So if you're an organization, it'll ask for all that information. It will want you to tell them who to contact. So for instance, if you have someone within your organization or within your community group that's going to do all the paperwork, it's going to do all the admin, and you trust them and they're brilliant, this is the person that you put into that group there. And be very careful, and I know Monica will agree with me on this, be very careful, know what name you're going to be applying in. You know, sometimes it can be very, very confusing if you have, I've been in an organization where there's been an English version of the organization name and an Irish version of the name, and sometimes it can cross over in spellings and everything else. So make sure you know who you're going to register.
Can I just say something? If it's an individual, just to be very sure that it's the name that's on your bank account.
Yes.
Because an awful lot of people have double barrel names which actually aren't correct. And a lot of people use an Irish version of their own English name. So, you know, it's just whatever name is on your bank account is the name you apply for.
That's it. And thank you for that, Monica, as well, because yes, you know, I have a second name and I have my own name that I use for work. And that is very important, that the bank account is in your name. And that's the one that you pop in. And they do allow you, they'll say, you know, if you're going to apply for funding through the Arts Council, it can take a little bit of time. They're usually fairly speedy, but it can take a little bit of time to set up an account. I was trying to access the my ARN details over the weekend, and I just couldn't get in. It was locked down for the whole weekend. So, you know, if you have an application due Monday, that's going to give you some undue stress. So, you know, go away today and sign up for an Arts Council account. You've got it, put the details somewhere so you can remember what they are. They'll give you an ARN number, and you'll also have a password to access the account. Go in there, add in your bank details. If you have a tax clearance certificate, they give you all that space within there to pop that information in. Similarly, the Limerick Arts and Culture Office, which is part of the LCCC, this is the website you'll see when you go on it. Just click, and I have, again, all the links down here on the left-hand side when you get these slides. The cultural strategy, the Limerick Cultural Strategy, informs funding, and it informs where the money goes within the arts and culture structure in the city. So I think it's a really important idea to keep yourself up to date with that. It's here, I think it's 2016 to 2030. Yes, there it is. The Cultural Strategy Framework 2016 to 2030. There's a link that takes you directly to that over here. Have a read of it. It's a big document, but that's okay. Find the pieces that are relevant to you and have a read of it and find out, because they are very keen to support communities within Limerick City and County, within the Midwest. They're very keen to support organisations, arts organisations and artists. So there's a plethora of funding that comes online at various different times, from bursaries to arts grants funding, which we'll take you through here now. So get signed up again for an online account. Now, it took me a bit of, if there isn't an application or a grant out at the moment, it can be a bit hard to find where to register. I've put the link here on the left-hand side, sign up for online account. They use submit.com. So the Arts Council, you will download your application, you will fill it in offline, and you will upload it along with all your supporting documentation. Limerick Arts and Culture Office does a very different thing. It's submit online, which is actually handy because you can kind of save your draft and go back in and go back out to it. And all your information is uploaded, whether that's images or videos or your budget, all in the one place. And it's quite large sometimes, you know, especially if you're making your first application and you're looking for your Twitter handle or your Facebook handle or your website. It's a bit, you know, complicated when you're making your first grant application, but after a while you have that information stored away somewhere and you can copy and paste that in for every application you're making. So get signed up for that account again. Again, I have some information on that further down the line, and that's quite similar to the Arts Council sign up. You will find a couple of grants: Made in Limerick, Creative Limerick for Creative Ireland funding, festival and events grants, similar to what Karl was talking about there. They are very similar within Limerick Arts and Culture Office. Grants under the arts, they can be small now. They can go from about €500 to, I think the max is about 1,000 there, Monica, for
It's
the
1,000, yeah. It's only up to 1,000, yeah.
grants under the arts.
Mm.
But you know, if you're planning, you know, a small day hip hop festival, for instance, within your community, you know, €500, €1,000 will go a very long way to booking a DJ, booking the equipment, you know, and if you have volunteers to help you with the rest of it, then, you know, that funding will go towards paying the artist, which is something, you know, that's very, very important. Paying the artist, paying the people, and that goes across the board, from technicians to the person that goes and stands up on stage.
And there, can I just say, while you're
Do,
on
Monica.
that, well, I know you've mentioned the newsletter again, but the newsletters are so vital. I often forget myself about deadlines. There's another deadline coming up for Limerick Council, and it's the Regeneration Social Intervention Fund. I've just put some stuff into chat there.
Great,
Most people may know about that, but it's the deadline for 2022 is, I think, the 15th of December. So there would probably be enough time now to make that application, particularly if you're going for the smaller, the under 10,000 fund there. So that's just, you know, it has to be for one of the Limerick City regeneration areas, which are Maross, South Hill, Weston and St. Mary's.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Monica. And the grants on the ends are for professionals, amateurs, voluntary community organisations and artists. So that's quite, you know, a wide scalp. And I think it would be really, really nice to see new people come into that market, new people make applications, new organisations and artists make applications for that. And, you know, I've made applications for years. I'm 20 years making applications, and you don't always get the first ones, and you do give up and you kind of think, oh, but keep persevering at it, because I've been with organisations that have had 7 rejections and then we get the 8th and we're like, yay. And then, you know, and particularly as well with the Arts Council, when you are a client of the Arts Council, they really want to nurture that relationship with you. And I think that that's really, really important. And you will meet other artists and community groups along the way. So keep trying is what I would say for sure in all of these. So that's grants under the Act. Sign up for the newsletter. We were going to keep repeating that to you again and again. Reports and publications. So this is over here, there's a link to this. And this is great because any publications or reports or any information that would be particular to the arts environment and the arts community environment are at this link. So, you know, if you have a bit of time or if you have someone who can go through those, there's some great information in there. It also tells you who's been funded. And so you can see what kinds of funding goes out there to events, and it might not, you might think, oh, I have to do a festival. Not necessarily. It could be a 1 or 2 day event within your community. You know, I always remember Are You Dancing from 2014, you know, that was such a great project. I remember dancing up in St. John's Square, you know, and, you know, this to imagine that this was something that was you know, funded through the arts it's wonderful to see. So, you know, all those ideas going around in your head, you never know, somebody might like them. Okay, social media, stay informed. Again, Limerick Arts Office on Facebook, Limerick Arts on Twitter, they're on Instagram. I'm not sure their Instagram handle, but you know, you'll find that on this website here as well. Again, keep up to date. That's the link. And actually, I think if you probably click on that, yeah, when I send you the slides, that'll take you directly to the sign up. We've tried to make it as easy as possible for you. Okay, to sign in. So if, you can sign in up here. When you go to that link that I gave you, the second one down, you'll get this page. There's lots of information on this page, big picture. So it's up into the top right, you'll go and you'll see sign in. And for yourselves, if you have never signed in before, if you don't have an account, you want to register. So here you go again, it's the same thing. And I always think it's really important to have a funding email that you have, you know, an email. So for me, I will use one specific email. I know we all have different emails. I use one specific one for all my funding applications. So that's the email that I know all the information will come in about the arts, all my cultural activities will come in on that. And it just keeps things separate. So if you have an office email, for instance, you might want to separate it out for an arts email of some kind. So you put your email address in here. Then you put your name, so your first name, your second name, and then you put in a password. You register then. Once you have your password that you're happy with, you click register. And then you've opened up your account. There'll be information then for you to kind of update your profile, put in who you are. But the next time now you go along then to apply for maybe a small arts grant fund, you then just go into your account and start working through it. Click on that and then you can save a draft. You think, oh, I have an hour to work on this today. And let me tell you, it takes many hours to do applications. I have an hour to work today. I'm going to start work on that and save your draft and off you go. Okay, Monica, did you want to add anything else to that regarding Limerick Arts and Culture Office there? Anything? They're hugely helpful, as Karl, you know, said. If you need to go to get a letter of support, we've got many letters of support from the Arts Office, and I know they're going to be doing some webinars coming up soon regarding their own funding strands.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, you know, apart from the grants that you've gone through, I do think they have really, in the last year or two, become very efficient in issuing letters of support. And they will write down, you know, and they'll just commit to funding a certain amount, usually 10%, maybe a bit less of the amount you're applying to the Arts Council for. You know, you just need to give them a bit of time so that they can give you the letter. They'll ask you for a little bit of information about your project, and they will give you a letter saying that they're committing to give 10% to that project if it's successful with the Arts Council. It's trigger money. It's really powerful. So really having a good relationship with them is very important, even though they are run off their feet, but they do get back. There's a good few people working there now, so they do get back when you put in a request for that letter.
They do, and you know, let them know that you're interested in making funding applications. In the same way with the Arts Council, you know, they may not have a lot of time to talk to you, but you know, you can, looking for advice, someone, you know, they're very good for coming back to you. And I know probably everybody's working off site remotely with COVID, but people are still working through. So I think something that myself and Monica talk quite regularly about is connecting artists and community groups and arts organizations. And it's something that, you know, not everybody thinks about all the time. And artists are always looking for community groups or arts organizations often to work with as well. So, you know, this is an area where we think is really, really important. Have you made connections with local artists? You know, what local artists do you know? And that could be across the board. You know, they do work well together for funding. You know, if you go to the Arts Council, you say, you know, we're going to do an audio project. You know, we want to interview people in the music community in Limerick. What artists would do that for you? What artists are you interested in connecting? Is it someone, you know, involved in the choir in St. Mary's Church? You know, who can you work with that's an artist already out there? And similarly with artists, what organizations are out there? And we developed a directory for Creative Communities Midwest. So part of Creative Communities Midwest remit this year, the GAFF was very lucky to get funding for this Creative Communities network. Part of our remit was to build a directory of organizations that are out there. So that's up on the GAFF website, thegafflimerick.com/Creative Communities Midwest. God, there's my memory. And so
can I just make another suggestion there, Maeve?
Yeah.
I know that, you know, with CREATE and with National Youth Council of Ireland, you can apply for money to do the research phase. And I suppose it's that phase where the artist and the community entity really get to know each other. But even prior to that, you know, if you're a community organisation, you know, find 150 or 200 quid, pay an artist to do a taster workshop of what you're talking about. Just a one-off without any expectation. I think it's one of the most valuable things that a community group will ever do, rather than jumping into an application process when maybe you haven't even tried out the basics, the real basics in your centre. You know, do the visual art workshop, try a drama workshop, whatever the thing is. I think that's the first way to get to know your artist. And you might do that over, you know, you might do it across 3 different art forms. And it's, you know, it's only a small amount of money, and I know community organizations are strapped, but I think everyone can find a couple of €100 just to say, you know, we're going to have a 2-hour workshop in printmaking to see, is this something that the young people or the older people or whatever your demographic is this something they really want to develop, and then make your application.
That's it. And look across your whole community, from young, you know, right up to older, you know, see what, you know, what arts, you know, thing they're into. What do they do? Do they like literature? You know, do they like music? And that's a great idea, Monica, actually.
And actually, I know some of the groups here today will have relationships already with the ETB, not just with youth work, but with community education. So through the community ed or the adult ed department, you could ask for a tutor in a particular art form.
Yeah,
that is done, just to give yourself a first taste before you make an application.
And remember, there are organizations like Music Generation out there as well, working in the community all the time, and they have, you know, lots of musicians and people available. Make your own database. You make a database. You go onto our directory and you can see people, and add yourself to our directory. You know, we still have spaces on the directory, so send us your information. I can, you know, sign up. You know, my email address will be here now. I've been in touch with pretty much all of you, and I'll send you on the information. Sign up for our newsletter, which we send out once monthly as well, and sign up for our directory so that artists and other organizations can see that you're there and that you're interested in working within the arts as well. Make your own database. It could just be one Excel spreadsheet, you know, with, you know, artists we've worked with, what do they do, what's their phone number, you know, what's their email address, and also other community groups. You know, look to other people within your community, other organizations. As I said, they're musicians, filmmakers, actors, directors, they're all there, they're all looking to connect, and audio is a really growing part of community work within the arts. So there's a few audio artists in Limerick that would certainly be looking to work within the communities for sure. And go and see work in the community. I think this is really, really important. Myself and Monica were just talking about an exhibition in the People's Museum just before we came online there. Go to the theatre, you know, go to a music venue, and you might find the artists that you want to work with. When I work with festivals as a producer, I go to gigs, and I've walked up to people on stage and said, you know, we'd really like to bring you to our festival. Can I take your details? You know, that's how instant and how quick it can happen. So make sure that you know who's around, what artists are, and we can certainly assist with that in building a database as well for anybody who says, well, I don't know anybody, could you put me in touch with people in a certain genre? We can do that, no bother. And so the other,
I suppose maybe it's no harm to remind people, you probably met them already through Creative Communities, but if you look at Una McCarthy in Limerick City Gallery of Art, Jenny Traynor in Dance Limerick, they have a dedicated outreach programme now called Dance Limerick Bridge, DL Bridge. Maria Cagney in the Hunt Museum. There are more people like that out there. They are very open and very approachable.
Yeah, absolutely, Monica, that's true. So keeping your eye out, and you'll meet people. I mean, we're not meeting a lot of people these days at the moment, but you know, there's a lot of work going online, and there's a lot of work still planned. Whether it goes ahead now or not, please God it will. But you can walk into an art gallery now and walk around and see the work, and know who's creating work, particularly at home here in Limerick. Okay, so making an application. So this is this is getting into the nitty gritty stuff now. And myself, Monica, we kind of wanted to share our pitfalls and things. And again, if there's any questions you have, please do put it into the chat. We'll do our best to answer it. And if we don't know the answer, we will find out the answer for you if we can. You know, pop it into chat there, and we'll come back to that. So Monica and myself are going to take you through this, and I know Monica has sat around the table and seen arts applications, as have I, and you'd just be amazed at, you know, one application can have every bit of detail typed out really clear, and then you might get a handwritten application with no supporting documentation, and you know, that's not going to work. You have to put in the time that it takes to put an application together, which includes supporting documentation, making sure it's legible, making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. But the big one is this application, is it suitable for your organization? So you're looking at an application online and you're saying, okay, I'm going to apply for that. Well, first download all the information on that, and they'll have a PDF there or a Word doc that you can download, and look at the terms and conditions and read it through, and get somebody else within your organization to read it through. Is it suitable? Are you just wasting your time applying for it? And nobody wants to, nobody has any time anymore really to do that. So check it and say, okay, I think this is awesome. We fill this criteria. Let's apply for this. You're going to need supporting materials, and collect that early. That is really important. As Karl said, they look for letters of support, as do Limerick Arts Office. You're going to need a budget, and it can be quite a simple budget. And we are going to do a budget webinar further down the line. We'll record it and we'll have it there. So we'll show you what lines would be important on that budget for an arts application. Your creative team CVs, as Karl mentioned, if you have never applied for funding for an event that's coming up and you don't have any brochures from previous events, send in the team CV so they can look and say, oh, actually, they've got a producer here that knows their salt, or the person who is going to deliver the event is very, very good, and we know them. And it just reassures that they're going to give public money to somebody that's going to deliver the project. And then if you have evidence of a previous event, a brochure, images, a teaser trailer, behind the scenes, any of those will be supporting material. Complete your application and then have somebody else review it. You'll be told this 100 times, but it is really, really important. I'll often send an application over to Monica, you know, go have a gawk at that, you know, is that okay? Have I got everything in there? You know, because sometimes a fresh set of eyes over it will say, well, firstly, you know, you need to do spell check on that. But secondly, you're missing this, you're missing your aims and objectives. You're missing why this application is important to Limerick County or city or wherever you are. So do have somebody else have a look at it. Be clear and concise. Don't ramble. Explain what you want to do. This is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to deliver it. This is who I'm going to use to deliver it. And these are my outcomes. And that's it. You know, I want to run a flute festival in Limerick. I'm going to bring in this flautist to do workshops. We're going to have a concert at the end of the night. And we feel that this will bring more people into music in the area. That's it. And that's what you put in your application.
I can just say one thing, you know, usually, so it's like what you want to do, who you want to do it with, and how you're going to do it. So what you want to do might be relatively easy, although sometimes that's not clear. Who you want to do it with should be straightforward enough, but the how, an awful lot of people fall down on the how. How are you going to deliver this? Who's going to do the administration? Who's going to distribute whatever needs to be distributed? What are the venues? Is there a letter from them? You know, are all the pieces in place so that somebody reading it can see, okay, so they have support from this arts organisation or this community group to allow them make the work, prepare it, rehearse it or whatever, and then they're going to put it on here for 5 days, and it's going to be either online or 5 people at a time come in. You know what I mean? It's really simple English, spell it out.
And don't assume everybody will know you, that everybody on the panel will know you, because often it's exterior. People will come in, somebody from an arts office, you know, up the country might come into Limerick to assess the applications along with the councillor. Don't assume they're going to know your work. Don't assume they're going to know your organisation even. So it's really important that you spell out who you are, and you will be given opportunity to do that. You'll be given an opportunity to give a summary of who you are, what you've already done, and why you should get the funding. And apply in good time. That's right. And I'm saying that, and I'm usually down to the wire an hour before the application information needs to go out, but it is important to get everything together, because if you're expecting a letter of support for someone and you're chasing, and we're always chasing letters of support. So, you know, do, when you're considering asking somebody for a letter of support, send them the information in advance. Say, look, this is what I'm applying for. I'd love if I could have a letter of support from you. Here's the information that you need to know to put into the letter. So they're not coming backwards to you going, well, what's this for? Who's in it? What's going on? That you give them that information, so it makes them easier to, you know, they're going to be busy people as well. So apply in good time. That's a very important one. Okay, supporting documentation. So it's a big area. What do you put in here? So again, with the Arts Council, like I said, you complete your application offline, your application form, you collect all your information, you label it with the name, and then everything has to have the same name, and put all your letters of support into one document, because there is a limit to what you can load up, and also it makes it easier if everything is in together, so you can kind of PDF the PDFs all together in one go. And you load it up on, say, the Limerick fund with the Limerick Arts Office. You will do it on submit, so you can do it as you're going along. You can upload the information that you need. Some of the other applications, Monica, they really are in the main offline, aren't they? You download an application, fill it in, and email it in for a lot of those.
There's just a couple of things I was going to say, just to be very careful around videos. The number of times videos don't work when there's a link presented, they just don't work. And sometimes you'll be looking at videos and you think the person might have been better not to put in a video. So unless it's good quality, I wouldn't put it in. You know, good photographs and even one piece of documentation about a previous project might be good enough. So you don't have to overload the evidence of previous events, but whatever goes in should be of quality.
Yeah, and I think if you are, you know, if they do recommend, in fact, I think they will only accept YouTube links now through some of the funding organizations. You know, you can have it so that it's a private unlisted link, but keep it active until it can be months before your application is read, weeks. So do keep it active. You know, don't delete it or remove it. And if you're using you know, a storage like Dropbox or any of those to store, and you're sending in a link, make sure you keep that item there for the time being, because it can take time. It's you know, and they will respond to you. You'll get an acknowledgement that your application has gone in, but that doesn't mean they're going to look at it straight away. It could be several weeks before a panel gets together to have a look at your information.
And you know what's a hidden bit of work at the last minute? You know, when you might have, say, 3 collaborators, and you say to them, will you send me in your CV? And usually the CV comes in and it's fine, but not always. And you can have an amount of time. I mean, I've had to literally write the CVs for people who wouldn't know how to write a CV. They might be a brilliant community-based artist, but they wouldn't have had a need for a CV, remarkably enough. So I think even though you feel you shouldn't have to do that work,
it's there.
If you put in a bad CV for somebody who's brilliant, you need to fix it up for them, you know, so that it does represent what they do and that it's accurate.
Then that takes time. And, you know, I know that applications have been thrown out because there were no CVs attached, and a biography is often not good enough for certainly for the Arts Council. They want a CV. Do put your letters of support. Like I said, I PDF everything, so it's easy, and then you know things aren't going to move around in like a Word doc and that. So PDF it all, get your CVs, and the artist and your creative team. You know, if you're going to work with someone who's going to make an musical score for you, you know, who's your technician that you're going to work with, that's, you know, potentially going to do a really great VR project for you, make sure you have all those CVs together. The budget is really important. So as Karl was talking about this earlier, you know, if you have a source of funding as well, so you might be able to add, you know, €500 to a project that you're going to apply then for additional funding. Your project's going to cost you €3,000. You're potentially applying for 2,500 off the Arts Council. But do put in, there is a line for benefit in kind, and that's really important. If you're getting the holla, or, you know, if somebody says, oh, I'll do the video for you, put those in. And also you will be asked to record volunteer hours as a figure, as an actual like sum. So that's really, really important to be on top of that. How many volunteers am I going to have? How many hours are they going to work? And that is goes into your little benefit in kind section. They want to see how many people, they know a lot of festivals, events, community arts days are led by volunteers, and they want to have an idea of what that is, because that information is put into a report and it goes elsewhere. So in your budget, you will be putting in your costs for technical equipment. If you have to pay fees to artists, you know, maybe you have to feed people on the day. Maybe have travel in there, maybe even overnight if you're bringing somebody in from somewhere else. So there are several lines in that budget. You will have kind of artistic lines, but then, you know, day-to-day lines in the budget as well of, you know, admin, it's going to cost me this for the phone. I'm going to have to get a videographer in. All of those will get, and we will do a webinar about that, just to kind of, because you could never do that in one sitting, the whole budget background. Evidence of previous events undertaking. If it's your first time, again, send in another event that you did, videos, images and brochures. And governance. This is really, really important. You need to have very, very good governance. You may be asked for tax clearance certificates. Your name on your bank account should match the organization or the person who's putting in the application funding name. Make sure, I don't think they accept credit unions, for instance, in the Arts Council. I'm not sure that Limerick County Council do either. So you have to be able to accept electronic transfer, because that's how the money goes. You will download 80% of your fund, and then at the last, you'll get the last 20 usually when you complete and send in a report. Your committee or board of directors, and not everybody has a board, they have a small voluntary committee, information on who are they, why have you that particular committee together. So, you know, that's really important that you make sure that information is in there as well. And all paperwork needs to be labeled correctly with the name of the organization and the project. And we'll keep coming back to that. And we keep saying that. Make sure you have the name. Make sure that the, you know, if your project is, you know, about, I don't know, if you're going to do like the fiddle project, you know, that it's going to be, you know, the GAFF fiddle project budget, the GAFF fiddle project letters of support, that everything is labeled correctly, because it just makes it easier if things get lost in the system. And they do insist on it at the Arts Council as well. Kind of this is the end of it now. If anybody does have a question, either put in chat.
Can I just say one more thing, Maeve?
You do, Monica, go on.
Just about the fees, just to be absolute, you know, to put in appropriate fees. And that is something, I mean, we won't look over your application, but I'm very happy to give anyone advice anytime about an appropriate fee, or what I think is an appropriate fee. It's hard to get it right. You obviously don't want to underpay, and you don't want to overpay. And, you know, a team around the table of peers will be very critical if artists are paid too little on an application. It could work against you. And you don't want to over exaggerate any costs, because maybe not as much with local authority, but nationally, the kind of policy would be pay the applicant what they're looking for. Nobody ever would say, oh, we'll knock 20% off there because they don't need all of that for whatever else they've costed. So really put in your costings appropriately. Don't under cost and don't over budget.
That's it. That's brilliant. So look, there's no more questions in chat or anything. So we will let you go back to your day's work. It was really great. Thank you so much for staying with us. And you know, Karl came in slightly later, but we were absolutely thrilled that he did manage to come in, because he does give a great overview. We will, as we said, send out this information to you. Sign up for our directory. Send us an email, and you can sign up for our newsletter as well. And we would be delighted to talk to you if you need any advice or if you need any help. And we have a couple of more budget webinars and things like that coming up, and a conference in the new year. Gurmila, everybody, thank you so much, and thank you for being a part of our day today. We hugely appreciate you being here as well. Thank you very much.